Welcome to Corporate Cafecito,
a Latin and business podcast where we share insights and strategies to help entrepreneurs and professionals thrive.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Corporate Cafecito. Yo soy Nayeli Suarez Gas.
Y yo soy Carlos Butler Vale.
So last time we were talking about trust, and I think you could tell that we felt very passionately about trust. And, we said that the biggest way to build trust was to show up. And we kept saying, like, show up, but, que seas a comedida, to also make sure that you do something or that you're ready or you are of value in the meeting versus just sitting on these virtual calls. And so, today we want to talk to you about preparedness and being ready.
Yeah, I love that. And I think immediately what came to mind for me was, one of the episodes that we just filmed around kind of like the visibility audit and like the importance of preparing backwards, right?
Yeah.
And I think, just generally preparedness is, I think, important, when you show up to whether it's a meeting or an event or whatever it might be. If you're the participant, when someone has, or when the individual or the group has been prepared. That all of these things have been thought through. You know very quickly that they were purposeful in every detail, right?
And we've been doing it since we were little.
Yeah, but that doesn't just happen. Right?
No.
It doesn't happen in work. It doesn't happen in life. And it's obviously something that I think sometimes we can take a little bit for granted.
Think about when you were little and you wanted to have a sleepover with your primas or primos, and you would be like, okay, whose house? And we'd be like, okay, we're going to have it at Lore's house. Okay, well, we need to ask for permission. It's like, okay, well, go with me, and then we'll go to your parents, and we'll tell them. And the reason why we need to sleep over each other's houses is this. And so you used to plan. You used to get your team assembled. You used to practice how to ask for permission. And then you executed your plan. Knowing which would be like the first parent to ask, knowing who to ask for to actually host, etc., so that you could just boom, 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 boom. So we've been doing it forever. Now do it in the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you say that. One of the things that I think about for me, so two things that I think are just big mottos, I would say, in the workplace are like under promise, over deliver.
Every time you say motto, I say, what's a motto?
Yeah, right.
What's the matter with you?
I under promise, over deliver. I think to me that's a big kind of preparedness one, and then hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And the reality is, it's not that you want to take necessarily such a negative view on it. I don't know if it's like the worst, but like the idea is that you're really thinking through and you have contingency planning, and you've prepared for a multitude of possibilities. And I agree. I think that when a person can consistently show up as prepared, or I've been duped before. Some people are pretty good about like the last minutes, but for the most part, though, you can tell when there's been a lot of thoughtful planning and preparedness that has gone into it. So talk to us a little bit, like what is a benefit of preparedness?
Well, one, it'll make you more confident.
Ooh, yeah.
If you are prepared, if you understand the material you're going to deliver, or if you're going to an interview and you've read like their annual report, you watched videos, you check the news, you know what they do, you know how your skill sets are a good match, and your preparedness shines, right? You can answer the questions, you know why you're there. When you're prepared and you go into a meeting, like you shine brighter.
Yeah.
Right? You stand behind your numbers. If someone says like, well, I don't know if that's the right number, you say like, well, what do you think it is? Because I have data to support this number, and I'm curious as to why you think it's wrong.
Yeah.
You have a different, as the kids say, aura. You have a different aura when you're prepared. You walk in and think about when, everything's going to be about our childhood now. But when you have to make the cheat sheet for your test, you went in super prepared because you had the cheat sheet, but your preparation by writing that cheat sheet is what prepared you for the test. When you are prepared, you are confident.
Yeah.
And in order to be prepared, you have to know your stuff.
I think the confidence element is really, really important because, um, you know, in my career in HR, you know, I've interviewed many, many, many people over the years, and I've sat in on a lot of different, you know, interviews as well. And I think the confidence that oftentimes can make a difference, for example, in that situation, it's a calm confidence.
Yeah.
You know, it's not too, you know, cocky or anything like that. I mean, so I'm not talking about like overconfidence, but like when you know that someone has taken the time to deliberately research these
Right.
things, to reach out and have the conversations beforehand, to show up with examples that are relevant to the conversation, that makes a big difference.
It does
You
make a
know,
big
and
difference.
it can, you know, particularly in this environment where it can be really tough. That's the hair splitting that sometimes happens.
It is.
And so I totally agree with you.
I also think it's important when you're not prepared to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say it oftentimes, like, I'm not prepared to answer that question. I haven't looked into it.
Yeah.
Or I don't know that answer, but let me get back to you. I'm going to go look into stuff, because false confidence
Mm.
and false preparedness is like, and I'll just tell people, like, nope, stop. You're guessing. Let's go through, get the right answer, and
Yeah.
then come back, because I don't know the right answer, but I know that that's not it.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's really important too. It's just like how you are prepared, what you prepare for, and then also just like your follow through.
So let's talk about a little bit, you know, because I think more often than not, I see people that are willing to just, to your point, either give the wrong answer or guess, or, you know, and they don't know how. They don't have the skill set, or they're afraid for whatever reason, or maybe, again, going back to maybe the trust wasn't there,
Right.
right? So, you know, you talked about some ways that you have been able to do that. If it's like a particular topic maybe that you should be presenting on, but are there other ways? I mean, first of all, I think about mitigation, right? Like, there's always an opportunity to come back a little bit more prepared. So
Yep.
there's a, you know, there's obviously something to be said there, but like, is there, does that, does that work differently if you're talking to peers versus you're talking to like a supervisor? Like, when we're thinking about our relationships at work, does something like disclosing that you're not, that you don't have the information, that you weren't prepared, does that look different?
I think it depends on what the expectation is.
Okay.
If it's part of your regular job and, I ask you for a finance report and you're not prepared to give it to me and you're like, well, I don't have this. And I'm like, okay, give me the last one. Well,
Yeah.
then you're not, don't lie.
Yeah.
And secondly, then it's, are you the right person?
Yeah.
Right. And then I also think about, within coworkers, like, yeah, you know what? One time you might not be prepared. The second time I'm not covering for you.
Yeah.
Right. The second time that becomes a you problem, not
That's
a me
good.
problem, not an us problem.
Yeah.
And so I think that, there's going to be times, I'm thinking about this gentleman I worked with, and his wife was going through cancer and treatment, and they had a little like newborn. And I was just like, you know what? During the day, I'll do my regular work, and during the night, I'll do your work.
Wow.
And we did that because we carried each other.
Yeah.
There were times when I needed him that he carried me. And so
Wow.
we never let the ball drop, because that was the type of trust and relationship that we had at work.
Yeah.
And in my whole life, I think I've seen him 3 times at
Wow.
conferences. But we just knew it was one of those things where, as coworkers or as people on the same team, we knew we could trust each other,
Yeah.
and we would help each other look prepared, because we knew that situations were beyond our control.
Yeah. You know, gosh, I don't even know. I can't even imagine having to do something like that. But, you know, the fact that you were prepared to take that on obviously says a lot. You know, when I think about other examples, when I think about this topic, and I think about the audience that we traditionally have. I mean, we have a very broad audience, but when we think about the fact that we're a Latin business podcast, right? I think about the fact that you don't have necessarily a million chances to get this right.
No.
In some cases, you only have one. In some cases, maybe you have two or three, depending on obviously the situation and the individuals and the relationship and the topic or whatever that might be. But I bring this up because I think particularly for Latin audiences, it's important to remember that there may be people out there who just already have biases about who you are, how you are, you know, people could say anything from like, oh, there's a laziness there or, a lack of caring or whatever it might be. And I'm not saying it's all necessarily negative. Sometimes it could be, they're an overachiever and then all of a sudden you go into this conversation and you're not prepared. So like, for us, I think it's even more important and relevant. It's important for everybody to be prepared, but I think it's important to keep in mind that for our demographic group, for a number of reasons, it's even more important to show up.
So, one, I would say it's in our culture to show up, right? We say, hombre preparado vale por dos, right?
Like
to
that.
be prepared to, that defines your worth. And I would say because we define our worth so much on being prepared, we have a lot of make do's, right?
Yeah.
A lot of we try to figure out how to make things work,
Yeah.
even in bad situations. But I also think our solutions speaks to our preparedness. I think that when we are talking about like feeling unprepared, it's like, okay, how do I fix this? And
Yeah.
to have that solution oriented mind when you're not prepared is really important, right? Like,
Yeah.
and maybe you're not prepared because there was nothing you could do to prepare.
Yeah.
When we are thrust into a situation for the first time, it's like we're all going through this for the first time.
Yeah.
Let's figure out like what do we do? I had a logistics company and I had a van stolen. And I was like, oh my God, what do we do? And I was like, okay, what do we need to do? And I was like, step one, let's make sure, where's the driver?
Yeah.
The driver was fine. I was like, okay, good. Step two, call the police. Okay, call the police, boom. Step three, what would I do? Activate the GPS. What's funny is one of our drivers had ripped the GPS off, but I had 3 more in the van.
Oh, wow.
So I
Okay.
was like, activate the backup GPS. And by the way, I didn't do that because I thought they were going to rip that, but I did that because I thought if someone got into the van
Sure.
and they wanted to deactivate the
That'd be the first
GPS,
thing
I
that they
needed
would
to
do.
have a
Yeah,
backup.
of course.
And
Smart.
then I was like, 3, like drive out, like step 4, drive out to the van and just, recover it and whatnot. But I think sometimes we think about being prepared and we think we need to know everything.
Yeah.
And I say, I think if you know the first step, if you could say like, okay, the first thing I need to do, then you know the path because you'll know the first step to take. And if you take the first step, the next step will show itself.
But, I hear a few things there. You obviously worked backwards from a potential situation, and that then allowed you to be able to be better prepared. And then on the other end of that, when something actually did happen, you had those steps because you had already sort of thought through what this was going to be.
No,
and,
I didn't even know what to do. The first thing I did was cry.
Well, you didn't think you knew what you
Yeah.
you didn't think you knew what to do, but obviously whether you realize it or not, you were prepared.
Yeah.
Obviously for that situation, and then of course, I think about how there are any number of things and factors that can come up, right? Even as prepared as you think you might be, but you brought up something that I think is important because it is there. So I'll ask you this: like, is there such a thing as being over prepared?
Yes.
Good. Let's talk about it.
I want to see what you look like in a suitcase going to Cancun.
Oh, yeah. Why?
Because I feel like you are over prepared.
I can be. Yeah. funny enough, particularly with shoes, like I could probably, and it's not that I have that many, but I just want to have like 6 different options, like depending on what I want. But yeah, I
See,
don't.
I over prepare professionally and I under prepare personally.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So when
Huh.
I'm going to like when I'm going on a trip, I'm always like, I always have to hit a store anywhere I go because I'm like, oh, I forgot my
That's
toothbrush.
funny.
I
Yeah.
don't have this, blah blah blah. So it's always like,
Yeah, and I can see that. I mean, you're not typically traveling on your own. You've got, kids that you're trying to make sure you're getting packed and all that other stuff. Like, particularly if you're traveling internationally, you've got like passports and all this other stuff. So I totally get that. But like, tell me about like, you said you over prepare at work, or you have over prepared at work. Like,
yeah, I'm like ready.
yeah,
So if I'm giving a presentation, I actually this is a good tip.
yeah,
Um, if it's a 1 hour presentation, I prepare for 1.5 hours.
okay,
Because what if people don't interact? What if people don't engage? So I can go through my presentation in half an hour or in an hour and a half. And I have depth, right? So if we're smooth, then this is how long I'm going to spend on each topic. If people are very quiet, then I'm going to go into more depth per topic. And if people are overly chatty and
sure,
engaged and we have great conversation, then I'm going to keep it very high level.
yeah,
And so it's a balance because if you have a limited amount of time, you don't know your audience. And every time you're meeting your audience,
true.
you don't know what place they're coming from. So that's how I over prepare.
So I think that's a good example of over preparation. I would venture to say that there are probably other times where being over prepared could be potentially negatively impacting. For example, I think about maybe an interview. And you spend so much time preparing about and researching 6, 7, 8 different topics, and you learn about who you're interviewing with and so on and so forth, and then all of a sudden those people change, or they don't want to talk about any of the things that you've necessarily wanted to prepare on. So now you've focused so much of your energy on 1 or 2 specific things, and now you haven't given yourself. And there's also like a little bit of a paralysis
Yep.
that I think can happen if you are over prepared. I mean, there are people that I've encountered that just have so much in their brains that when it comes time to actually like relay those things and like bring them out, there's a paralysis because I think oftentimes they're just like way over prepared.
So I do a lot of sales development training.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I tell people is set your goal. And when you reach that goal, shut up.
Okay.
And oftentimes when we over prepare, like we've put together this presentation, we have this whole spiel, we walk in and we're like, hey, what do you think about this? And what if we did this? And they're like, yeah, that sounds good. And then you're like, great. Well, I have a 20-page presentation. It's like,
Yeah.
shut up. We
Yep.
already got the
Yep.
cell. Like your over preparation got you to the point where this person trusts you
Yes.
and is just going to say yes right away.
And that's where it was useful. And keep it moving. Yeah, because I agree with you. I mean, I think there have been times where I've been on calls where someone's trying to sell me on something. And they're not they're so prepared, they're over prepared, that I think they tend to rely way too much on, you talked about this, the material or the spiel, where they're just like, okay, I may ask you some questions, but I'm not going to shift anything that I'm doing.
Right. And it's
And I'm
like,
just going to go into this because this is what I've prepared.
and I worked so hard on this.
Yeah.
And it's like, nope. So know your goal. And then if you get your goal,
Yeah.
never pass up the opportunity to
Yeah.
shut up.
You just reminded me about the importance of flexibility when it comes to preparation, because I think one of the things, and again, just even in the example that I gave, when someone can't be flexible in those circumstances or situations, it makes me kind of question, whether or not this is just you're checking a box, or you're actually responding to my needs in real time, which isn't necessarily always easy. But the times where I felt like I've developed more of a trusting rapport with individuals is when they've been able to be prepared enough so that they can be flexible and kind of, shift and change as the
I
conversation also
love that you bring
shifts and
this up because
changes.
preparedness does give you flexibility.
Yes,
It
exactly.
100% does. And so whenever we used to do like the assessments, I was all the way to like all the way to like 100 for flexibility. I always scored around like 96 to 98.
Okay.
And I told my boss, I'm like, oh, that's kind of good that I, have this much flexibility. And he goes, yeah, except whenever we change paths, you're so quick to adapt. You don't question it. You don't. And I'm just like, well, why would I question it if you're giving me the
Yeah.
direction? I'm like,
Yeah.
you want to go left? We'll go left. Oh, you want us to go right? Like, we'll go right. But that flexibility, also, he was like, if it felt like I wasn't like, I didn't put my flag down,
Yeah.
on some of the things I wanted to. And I would say, well, if it's for the benefit of the company, I'm flexible.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting because I viewed flexibility. I still view flexibility as like
Like a
I think it's
superpower.
I think
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
But it was interesting that he said you might be too flexible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
man,
It's. I think about being grounded.
yeah,
And like that. That push and pull between like being flexible but also being
yeah,
grounded. Because I think both of those obviously require different. They're important for different circumstances and have certainly their uses.
How
So
are some of the ways that you prepare yourself?
um I try to get as much information. So first of all, I love to pre-network. So I'm always trying to be prepared by making sure that I've got a really strong network. Because, and that's internal in an organization, and
Yep.
that's also just generally, you know, um, and outside, right? Professionally, uh, because something might come up, there might be an opportunity, whatever it might be, and I can almost always rely on the network that I have, both internally and externally, to be able to say, "Hey, something's coming up," or "I'm having a conversation with this individual.
Do
I
you
know you
know
have a better
them?
rapport with
Yeah.
them," and so is the right style to build a deck, or is it to just kind of send a quick email beforehand to prep? Like, do they like pre-read? Do they not? And so like that's how you get that intel. I think the other way to be prepared is to observe. You know, if I know that maybe in 3 months' time I'm going to be presenting on a particular topic, like you better believe that I'm going to be showing up for the previous months and observing how others present and how people are reacting. So then
Yep.
that way I'm adapting and shifting and changing and being prepared. And then nowadays, I mean, there's so many great resources and tools,
There
and so
are.
for almost any topic, if I at least just want to have some sense of preparation, I might maybe put it in like a GPT where it could be Chat GPT or Gemini or whatever it is. And I can say, hey, I want to start, I may not know about a particular topic and I want to be prepared to discuss it at an elementary level.
Right. Right. Give me the
And
basics.
teach me this in 5 minutes. And it's maybe I'm not going to be an expert on it, but at least it's something that I can talk
Right.
about.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's those kind of like micro learning opportunities that I feel like also have been really helpful. What about
Yeah.
you?
One, I read a lot. I
That's great.
read a ton. I love reading. I love reading briefs. I love reading industry stuff. So I like to be prepared before I go in to a meeting. That's probably what has helped me the most
That's awesome.
is to be able to say like, oh, well, this happened and this happened, and to be able to retain that information. Like if you read for comprehension.
Mm,
And then I would say the other thing is, to your point, I think networking.
yeah.
I very much value relationships. I value like the role they play, and I keep connected to people. And that has been like my business has been 100% referral based.
That's amazing.
So, 7 years in, it's still referral based. And I find myself very lucky and I base that off my networking and the relationships that I preserve, right?
Yeah.
I don't burn bridges. I make sure I address any conflict. I do those things because I value my relationships that I have with people and I prepare for them. And then if I'm doing work for like a friend or a major company, like I go deep. I remember
Yeah.
one time I was presenting to my friend brought me in to pitch on something, and he's like, "Wow," and I'm like, "Yeah, I really want to understand your business. I want to
Yeah.
understand it better than you, so that I can be prepared and I can be seen as the expert because that's what I'm doing."
Yeah.
And then, the other thing is I practice. I practice what I'm going to say. I practice my run times. I make sure I have to be prepared when I'm presenting. There's a certain way I like to dress. There's a certain way I like my hair. So I do all those things because that's like my, pre-game preparation
Sure.
for taking the stage.
Yeah. I think those are all great things, really great takeaways. And, you know, what I love about this time of the year is that we're not necessarily sharing things that people don't already know, but it's reshare. I think there's value in resharing and kind of re-engaging in these conversations because there's so much that happens. I mean, I don't know about you, but like for me, once the year sort of comes to an end, like a lot of things sort of grind to a halt, including this little thing right here. And then you try to kick things into high gear, and there's a lot that could be coming at you at the same time. And
Agreed.
so, if it's just even a quick reminder to think about the value add of being prepared and the dangers of being over prepared, then this would all be for good, right? And so I'm really glad that we're engaging in
I
this
know.
conversation.
I love this topic. I think preparation is part of, confidence, is part of your swagger. And I would just encourage you to not only prepare for what's in front of you, but prepare for what's ahead of you
Yeah.
and take those courses right now. Early in the year to me always feels like hope. And so I would say go on your learning management, or, if you have the opportunity to take a training or a class at a community college or online, or go on YouTube and learn a skill,
Yeah.
because it's really important to keep building yourself and preparing yourself and knowing that even if you're learning how to like draw with watercolors, like you're learning or using different parts of your brain and nothing is going to hurt it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to wrap up the conversation.
I agree, yeah.
Always good reminders, right? Just linking back to like trust and consistency, preparedness. Love what you said. It gives you confidence and it gives you flexibility. And I think those are obviously both win-wins. So, hasta la próxima. Nos vemos pronto. Gracias por siempre estar con nosotros. Soy Carlos Butler, ¿vale?
Nayeli Suárez Guest, nos vemos.